Welcome to The Self-Led Woman. This is a podcast about emotional eating, the experiences that shape our relationships with food, and the path back to self-leadership. These conversations go beneath behavior, held with deep respect for the wisdom of the body and the ways it learned to cope, adapt, and survive. And when we can peel back those layers and meet the parts of ourselves that need care, we begin to see that food was never the problem and we can return to who we really are. I'm your host, Megan Darnell. Let's dive right in. So recently I took some time off Instagram and it genuinely changed a lot more than I expected it to. I just realized that I need to stop letting this app have so much access to my nervous system kind of thing. And I want to share what happened because it actually surprised me. It changed the level of presence I have in my relationship. It changed my creativity. It changed my gratitude, which was really beautiful. It also affected the way my inner critic shows up, which was interesting. I noticed my relationship to my appearance changed quite dramatically, which I didn't even know was there. But it made me realize something about how distorted our perceptions can become. And this isn't the first time I've noticed this. I've noticed this in other areas of my life, but I just want to share these because I think it's really important to speak to. Even if you're someone that thinks or feels fine on the outside, but underneath is like a tiredness or you're overwhelmed or there's comparing going on or overthinking, I think that this will land, especially the comparison piece. And I'm not talking about us being disciplined with our screen time. It's about when we we feed ourselves something different that's not constant consuming of content. So there's a few reasons why I took a break. One of them was my honeymoon. And I shared a little bit of my honeymoon on my stories. Not that much, just a little bit here and there, a couple of photos. Even my friends, when I got back, they said, we were waiting for more pics and we just didn't get them. You really didn't share much at all. I mean, it was great. I was more present and I didn't want to be on Instagram filming the whole thing. But I lost about 30 followers during that time. And I remember noticing that, and I had a part that was like, are you fucking kidding me? This part was quite annoyed. And this part was like, if they're unfollowing me because I'm sharing my honeymoon, I don't want them on my page anyway. I'm not running my business like a robot. I'm a human being. I have a life. And if I want to share my life, goodbye, sayonara. But I also get it. I get that sometimes people unfollow because they're triggered. They're just like, I don't want to see this. Sometimes it's a projection, or sometimes they might look at your life and they might feel something that they don't want to feel. And instead of sitting with that, they'll just remove the thing that's triggering them. But if I'm being honest, I had parts of me that were a little pissed off. I'm not judging them or judging, what they did. I understand it. But these parts of me that got angry, and this is just a really beautiful demonstration of how our parts are always trying to protect us. They got angry because I worked so hard on my socials last year, probably too hard. I didn't stop and recalibrate when I needed to. I didn't actually stop and assess things. I didn't go, okay, what's working, what's not. I just kept working. I'm aware of that now. I can see it, but I couldn't see it at the time. I really did need to zoom out, but we are here to learn the lessons. But there was something about me, this part of me getting really pissed off that made me stop and go, wow, I'm caring way too much about something that doesn't actually deserve this much power or energy. And for me, that was the red flag, because if I'm letting an app dictate my emotional state, I need to step back. So that was one reason. But another reason, and to be honest, was comparison. There's a part of me showing up that was comparing myself and my business to other people's businesses and seeing them thriving and, growing and just killing it, and like, power to them. But the part of me that compares was making it mean something about me. I know that comparison is like a normal human being thing. And, often I hear people say, I've got to stop comparing, but it's like, we can never stop comparing. That is human nature. But it was happening enough that I was just noticing it changing my internal state. And it was also changing my relationship to my work. And I just was like, this is not it. And I don't want to be operating from this place. So I'm like, I'm going to take time off. So I deleted the app off my phone. And the first thing, I wasn't even trying, the first thing I noticed was gratitude. I just was noticing so much more great stuff in my life, like little things. I'm so grateful for the sun and my coffee. I'm so grateful for my business. I'm so grateful that I can work the hours that I choose to. Like, I wasn't even seeing all the good parts of my business because I was so focused on, oh, well, I'm at X and I want to be at Y and I'm not there yet. Like, no shade if you love a gratitude journal. Like, I'm not a gratitude journaler. I used to be, but it's just not something I practice now. But I wasn't doing that. Like, this was just coming through. I was so much more grateful for the people in my life, for my husband. I was noticing more of what he was doing, which is so beautiful, and how much he contributes and carries and how supportive he is. I mean, he is always supportive. He's like the best. For my, if you know him, like, you'll know what I'm talking about. He's just awesome. But I was just noticing so much more. And when I was noticing that and then expressing that to him, the energy shifts between us. I'm softer, we're more connected, and then they feel appreciated, which then they just want to show up more for you. It creates more warmth, more love, more generosity, and then I'm wanting to do more for him, and it just is a really beautiful loop that you find yourself in. Just more grateful for everything, like where I live, the beach, like more present on my walks because I wasn't wanting to get my phone out to check it all the time, more present with my friends. Like, life got bigger, funnily enough. Like, I'm not focused on this tiny little screen in front of me. Life gets bigger. Nothing actually changed. I just got my attention back. And I became more present in a like very specific way. Like, I wasn't consuming other people's lives or content. I was actually in mine, like present. I wasn't like sitting in moments going, oh, should I post this? Should I film this? Or comparing myself to someone else, like, or having dinner thinking, oh, should I take a photo of my food? I was just there enjoying it. And I think that, like, because of social media, sometimes that becomes rare. And another really cool thing that happened was my creativity ramped up. Because creativity needs space, right? And creativity is also a bit like a muscle. But when you're constantly consuming, you're filling up your life somewhere else. So there's no space. You're consuming, not creating. But if you are creating, if you don't have capacity, and this is something I know is my capacity increase, which I'll talk about in a second. But when you're creating from a place of pressure or forcing output because you think you should, like, it doesn't flow. When I stepped away, I was creating more than I was consuming. And I started to really love it again, which was so nice. But I had way more ideas. I was writing more. the ideas were just coming through with so much clarity and like more depth and more energy. And like, I feel like it caught up to where I wanted to be. And even having more desire to create, which again was so nice. But I had more capacity and I wasn't overwhelmed by this constant consumption of things. But I also want to speak to the other side of this, because it's not all rainbows and butterflies and just a very human experience. But I also don't want like people to think, oh yeah, she took time off Instagram. Like, I'm not sitting here going like I'm better than people that are like scrolling all day or anything like that. But something else happened. And I can speak to this because I feel like I've come out the other side, but my inner critic got really loud for a couple of weeks. Like brutal, like literally made me cry several times a week. Like, that's how mean she was. I know my inner critic. I have a relationship with her, but I couldn't unblend from her. It was like she was just in my face, being really mean. It was genuinely hard, and I was like, why can't I separate? Why can't I unblend? Why can't I work with her? But now I can see the whole picture. She was requiring my attention, which I know about parts, but when I was so blended with her, I was believing the things that she was saying. Because when we remove our distractions, when we remove the thing that numbs us out, and yes, I was scrolling sometimes to numb out, then we see what's underneath. It starts to come up. But instead of scrolling, I was sitting with myself, and that wasn't always easy on some days. But instead of consuming, I was actually feeling. I was allowing myself to feel. I was allowing myself to sit in stillness, to be in the quiet. But sometimes when we do that, it can be really confronting. And if you have parts of you that have been moving, like they've kept you moving for years, to slow down can really ramp that up. So my inner critic just came in like all guns blazing. But eventually I could turn towards her. And this is another piece, I had to realize, I was like, I need to work with her, because intellectually I know that. It's my intellectualizing part. But eventually I realized it wasn't the part, that inner critic wasn't the first part I needed to work with. The first part I needed to work with was the part that wanted the inner critic to go away, because she was actually making the inner critic louder. But when I could turn towards these parts, and then start turning towards them every day and just working with what's coming up and listening and just letting her show me what she's protecting, it honestly has made me have so much more capacity, but also more, I mean, capacity and in the sense of depth as well, because we can only hold the things in our life. And for me, including my clients, I can only hold them to the depths that I go to myself. So this is what this asks of me all the time. And I know that probably just sounds like a therapist thing to say, but it's true. You can't take people where you haven't gone. And it was asking of me to go deeper. But from all of this, even though the inner critic was ramping up with that stuff, and she certainly has been a little bit more present since I started the podcast, because there's parts there that like don't want to be seen, or that feel it's not safe to be seen. But my relationship to my appearance changed. And to be perfectly honest with you, I look at photos sometimes and think I look old, or I maybe film something on Instagram and want to put a filter on. But I didn't even realize how automatic that thought process was. And when I came off Instagram, I remember looking at myself in the mirror one day and thinking, I don't think any of those things, and I haven't changed anything at all. But I just remember not having that reaction, or not thinking, Like there was this noticing of wrinkles or this noticing of aging. And I was like, wow, that's so interesting. Nothing I did differently, like no skincare. I didn't change anything about my face. I just changed I guess, a part of my environment. And it just reminded me about how distorted our perceptions have become. And to drive this point home, I have another example of this. Well, a couple actually. But years ago, I was in my early 20s and I went to the movies with a friend and we watched the Sex and the City movie. And I remember Candice Bergen came on the screen and she was playing the editor of Vogue. And she'd probably had a considerable amount of filler or Botox or whatever. And her face looked quite like puffy. And no shame to her. Like, do what makes you feel good. Like, I'm all for, if you want to do something that makes you feel good, like, power to you. But at the time, in my early 20s, her face looked really puffy. And me and my friend, just being silly, I said to her, like, I made a joke and I said to my friend, it looks like someone stuck a bike pump in her face. And we were giggling and, being idiots. But, like, I remember years later watching this film, like I'm talking maybe 10 years later, maybe 15 years later. And the same scene, and I watched it and I remember thinking, she looks normal. And that is such a clear example of how our perceptions change. In my early 20s, which would have been, I don't know, early mid 2000s, probably mid 2000s, that look wasn't normalized, but it has become that way. We live in a world where filters exist, where a lot of people's faces are smoothed or lifted or sculpted or filled or contoured. I mean, look at even how far makeup's come, or edited. And I watched the exact same face, but didn't even register it. And that's not about people getting work done, but like our baseline has shifted, our perception has shifted, and we don't even notice it shifting. And I even see this, because sometimes we can have distorted perceptions. But when we're on Instagram, we have this constant stream of faces and bodies and lifestyles in our face, or curated moments, filtered skin, makeup, angles, lighting. Like, it's so curated. Perfect morning routines, perfect homes. But even if you're self-aware and it's curated, like we all know Instagram's curated, but we still absorb it. We still take it in. We still have parts of us that will compare or measure or scan. It will still adjust your perception. It will still adjust your baseline. And over time, when we consume enough of it, it becomes normal. It changes what we think is attractive or acceptable or what you think you should look like. And it does it quietly. Like, this can be so subtle, but you don't even realize it's happening. And it can show up as other ways too. And I want to share another story with you about how perceptions can change and how they can become distorted. And this is very relevant to women because we have a cycle and we run on a roughly 28-day cycle. And this is another piece of nuance that matters. Your perception of your body changes depending on where you are in your cycle. I know that just before my cycle starts, my perception changes. Just to give you a little story, so a few years ago, I was living in an apartment building and there were mirrors in the elevator. And I remember getting in the elevator one morning, and I saw myself ready for work, and I actually thought to myself, you look cute today. Went off to my day, whatever. I literally got in that exact same elevator maybe 3 to 4 days later, the same week anyway. And I looked in the mirror, and in my head, my inner critic said, "You fat motherfucker." And I was like, whoa, where did that come from? I know that I have not changed in 4, 5, 6 days, however long it was. I know I look exactly the same. And yet my entire perception of what I looked like had changed. It was such useful information for me to know, oh, okay, I'm at this point in my cycle. So now, just before my cycle, I don't spend too much time looking in the mirror. I'll get ready and I'll leave the house. If I notice those thoughts creeping in, I just clock them as, oh, okay, I'm having these thoughts because I'm close to my cycle. Like, move away from the mirror. Like, just don't make that a focus. And it's so interesting how that can happen. Like, your hormones change, your emotional sensitivity changes at times in your cycle, your internal world changes. Of course, your perception changes. And then when we add Instagram on top of that, or these curated feeds, it's like putting fuel on a fire. You're already way more sensitive, and then you expose yourself to an environment that is designed to trigger comparison. And then we wonder why we feel like shit. And this is what I want you to take from this episode. Like, it's not necessarily about taking time off Instagram. I'm sharing with you that it didn't just make me less distracted, but it's like it made me more connected to my life, to myself, to my body, to my relationship, to my creativity, even to my parts, like even the inner critic. But because I was able to connect with her, she's calmed down. And even when she pops up now, I actually stop what I'm doing and I'm just like, do a little check-in with her. And I just said, it's okay, I'm here with you. Like, let me feel what you're feeling. Let me feel 5% of it. And I just stay with her for maybe 30 seconds. But it made me realize so much of all of this. What we think is our personality is often just our nervous system responding to the environment we're in. And that includes Instagram. Even though it's not a physical environment, you're still focused in on this little screen. So it becomes your environment. So if your inner critic or the comparing parts of you are louder, particularly when you're on social media, it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong, but you're overstimulated. And when you are being exposed to like constant triggers, and if your body image gets worse, it doesn't mean you need to fix your body. It means you might need to look at the environment that you're exposing yourself to. And to bring this back to food isn't just food for us. It's so many things. It's so layered and complex. And we have such complex relationships to it. But it's also part of your environment. Sometimes it's, a coping strategy or a nervous system regulation tool. But the more overwhelmed and overstimulated and pressured you feel, the more likely you are to emotionally eat or just do something emotionally. Like, it's not necessarily food. Maybe it's scrolling. Maybe it's wine. Maybe it's shopping or control. But that needs to work harder when you're overstimulated or when your capacity is smaller. But it's all the same system. When I took time off Instagram, it wasn't about being disciplined. It's just about removing an environment that was dysregulating me. And my system responded beautifully, intelligently, the way it's designed to. So I also want you to know that if you've been feeling like your inner critic has been loud lately, or you've been having a lot of thoughts of comparison, or just feeling a bit more tension in your body, or maybe the thoughts about your body haven't been so kind, and well, not necessarily even kind. I'll also say this, maybe there's like body checking going on, scanning your body, measuring and analyzing it. maybe just consider like what happens to all of that if you maybe stepped away from those things that are overstimulating you, even just for 3 days. I didn't shut down my account. I just said I'm going to delete the app and then I'm going to check my messages once a day on my laptop. Laptops hit different. You just don't feel the need to scroll like you do on your phone. When you give yourself a little more space and stop feeding, no pun intended, your system like constant consumption, just notice what comes up in you, what gives you more space, and maybe what parts of you get louder as well. This isn't like to become enlightened or some BS like that. It's just to come back to yourself and just honoring what's there. But if stepping away from these things or certain environments can help you just come back to yourself, be more connected to yourself, to your body, then that's information for you. But I think it's very important information. No, this podcast is for education and reflection only. It is not a substitute for therapy or healthcare. If this episode brought things up for you and you need support, please reach out to a trained therapy practitioner or health professional in your area. Thank you so much for listening. If this episode resonated, please follow or subscribe to the podcast, leave a review, or share it with someone who might benefit from hearing it. You can also connect with me on Instagram at Megan Darnell Therapy. If you share the episode or want to let me know what landed for you, you're always welcome to message or tag me. I love hearing from you guys. Until next time, I'm Megan Darnell, and this is The Self-Led Woman.